had probably about a 4 or a 5 month period where I was using heroin with a couple of guys. We were snorting it. So apparently nobody smoked heroin back then. And so I snorted it for a few months, and then it was time to start injecting it. And then in 1987 I started with my brother. We started selling a wee bit of dope, and it just kind of snowballed through that.
After that event, you thought, I'm going to need to go somewhere and get away from here to try and find myself again, because I can't deal with this place. So you went to India.
I left, had a taxi waiting on me.
Did you know what you had in the bag?
Aye, so I knew what I knew what I had in the bag, aye.
How much did you have?
So I had 3 kilos that turned into 2.75 kilos. I'm looking in the mirror and I can see a marked police car, right? And I'm thinking, I don't like that. Driver stopped and the car gets swarmed with, turned out it was undercover plainclothes police. Took me to their police station, so they're called the anti-narcotics cell. There was about 22, maybe 25 people in this big cell. I remember I went in, there was a guy came up to me and he says to me, "That's your place in the corner." I was like, "Thanks," and he says to me, I says, "My name's James," and he says, "We know you, James, we saw you on read you in the newspapers." He says, "You don't have to tell anybody what your case is, we all know."
James Toner, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Jim. It's a pleasure.
It's great to see you, mate, and it's great to have you on. An amazing life story, very powerful. You're such a good character. So before we dive into that incredible story, talk me through what you've got going on the now with the present.
So I've got quite a bit going on just now. I kind of went back to study. Qualified as a counsellor therapist, and now I'm working in a rehab treatment centre for drug and alcohol as a deputy manager. And every morning I get up, I pinch myself, and I'm like, how did this happen? I'm in recovery, and a big part of my life is running about the recovery movement and 12-step fellowship stuff, and so that, that's probably what I get up to most. I go to work and I try and keep myself well and help others.
How long have you been in recovery for, James?
On the 13th of March it'll be 6 years. I have had a few wee dashes at it. I used to think it was the substance, or I used to think alcohol was my problem. I've not drank for 23 years. I stopped drinking because of my behaviour when I drank. And I always thought drink was the problem. When I stopped drinking, the problem stopped, and it made sense. I could see it. And then I got a few years abstinent, and then the problems come back again, and I'm not drinking, and so kind of life ran away from me for a wee while.
So we'll tap back into your work that you're doing at the present time.
Aye.
After we talk about your incredible life story. So take me back to, what age were you when you were first introduced to the drug and alcohol scene? I know you grew up in a rough area, Castlemilk.
So I grew up in Castlemilk. I had a drink when I was 15. I was sick. I was crying for my dad. I didn't like it. I didn't like how it made me feel. So I didn't rush out and think, oh, that was magic and I want to do that again tomorrow night. But by the time I was 16, 17, heroin had kind of 1981, 1982, the streets are all the streets of all the cities, I suppose, in Britain were kind of swamped with heroin. And I had probably about a 4 or a 5 month period where I was using heroin with a couple of guys, and I was enjoying it. I was working, it wasn't a problem. I was doing it, every night, every second night, 3 or 4 times a week, you know, so it didn't have a proper grip on me.
What were you doing? You smoking it?
No. Back at that time, and I didn't find this out until later on, but back at that time we were snorting it. So apparently nobody smoked heroin back then, because the heroin that was cutting about didn't burn and didn't run. So you were either snorting it or you were injecting it. And so I snorted it for a few months, and then it was time to start injecting it with the boys that I was hanging about with, and when it came to my turn, I got a fright, and I decided I wasn't going to do it, and that was me, you know. I didn't have its hook into me, and I was able to kind of walk away from it at that point.
What age are you at that point?
Probably 18. 18 would be 1983, so 18, maybe 19, maybe the following year, round about then, you know. It was round about the kind of 83, 84.
Did you start getting involved in the gang culture round about that time?
Aye, so I was probably involved in the gang stuff when I was about 16. I was street gangs, you know, like all the cities, Glasgow, Castlemilk, where I was fair, there was probably about 6 or 7 different gangs. So, you know, Castlemilk wasn't a big gang. My gang was a Bundy, and something I still find myself writing on bits of people and all that.
It's brainwashed into you sometimes, isn't it?
Aye, absolutely. You know, and also I find myself still staying in the Bundy the day, all these years later. I went back there to stay. So, you know, it was all fighting with guys that you'd went to school with who stayed in different streets. It was just that territory thing.
I know when I was involved in gang culture, I would like to associate with it, but I was never involved in any actual gang fighting. I would always drift away, and my intuition would kick in. So I knew what would happen. I would either get stabbed, slashed, go to jail, all of these things. So I always had that great awareness, and I never cared what anybody said, whether it be a shite bag or...
Aye.
I would just know that's no for me, and I would go to the parties with all the birds or whatever and be that guy, the funny guy. When did you really start getting involved in the serious crime then?
Serious crime stuff was probably... So, 85 I went to Jersey. Heroin had took a grip of the scheme. There was kind of a lot of the guys I'd been hanging about with were starting to use, or the younger kind of guys I was hanging about with were all using heroin. I went to Jersey because I was getting lifted quite a bit because I was fighting and getting drunk and all that. So I went to Jersey 85, 86, and I came back from Jersey the Christmas of 1986. And then in 1987 I started with my brother. We started selling a wee bit of dope, and it just kind of snowballed through there.
Did it snowball into harder drugs then?
Aye, so, you know, 80, 87, 88 would have just been solid hash, you know, the good old soap bar stuff. And then probably 89, 1990, it was selling pills, selling these. 1989, the kind of dance thing kind of arrived. 88, 89, arrived in Glasgow, and my brother was putting on loads of parties. I was going to the parties and selling the drugs at the parties.
Did cocaine come into it at one point as well?
Aye, that was a wee bit later. That was when that kind of arrived. I think I had a line in 88 or 89, and I remember the guy gave me the line, took me down to his house, and he's like, "What size are you?" And I was a wee bit weird than him the day. And I told him what size I was, and he went into his wardrobe, and he was a fence, I suppose you would call it, and he had all these suits, and put a suit on me and took me to the casino, and I couldn't believe it. It was absolutely amazing, and he's still my pal to this day, that guy. But I never get into it. Couldn't afford it, I suppose. At that point, it wasn't what I was into. But probably 92, 93, the full dance thing changed for me. Started using cocaine. Started selling it. And pretty kind of early on in my cocaine use, I was paranoid. I was always there. And then kind of mild psychosis, drug-induced psychosis was always a part of it for me too.
So that was into the 90s?
Aye.
How was your life between the early 90s up into the early 2000s then?
Absolutely horrendous. Although Oasis came, I could play the guitar. Quite popular when you can play the guitar. There was loads of parties, but also probably about 94, 95, I'd been in a relationship, it didn't work. My drinking was getting worse, my behaviour was getting worse when I was drinking. I was this angry wee guy that kept on coming out. It became quite violent as well. And I started smoking crack. So probably the kind of 85, 86, right through to 2000, I was kind of dabbling in that a wee bit. But the last couple of years of the 90s, it was horrendous. I was involved in all this crime, living in abject fear of getting caught, and what would people think, and all that stuff, and what would they think if they knew I was scared? And any money I got, it was me and another pal of mine were sneaking away and on the pipe.
See, but you said there about being scared and full of fear, because a lot of people, all gangsters and drug dealers and hard men, it's all run by fear.
Aye.
Fear, they're terrified, so they project all this stuff on other people to try and make a name for themselves or make themselves feel better, but it never works.
Aye.
It's just a hamster wheel, isn't it?
Absolutely.
See, so that was you in the early 2000s then, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know you had a traumatic event in the family, 2004. You speak me through that?
Aye, so I got, I suppose to give you the wee kind of backstory to it as well. In 2001, I had my first attempt at recovery. And I stopped drinking, I stopped using drugs, and I got away from the life of crime I was involved in. And I went and done a wee course, and I got a job in social work. And then I got another job in social work with the addiction team, ironically. And then in 2004, my brother was murdered. And my full life just kind of collapsed at that point. I wasn't able to process any of the stuff that was going on, and I started using drugs again probably about a year later.
So, was this your younger brother?
Aye.
So obviously a traumatic event, and you're trying to block out the pain, you're looking for anything that can help you, and all you know is to get these substances or alcohol. Were you using alcohol or not at that time?
No, because
Oh, that's right, you were off it for
aye,
it.
so I stopped drinking I haven't drank since 2001.
What type of drugs did you end up back on?
First was cannabis, because it's only cannabis, is what people would tell you. I think different now. First cannabis, sniffing cocaine, smoking cocaine, diazepam, sleeping tablets, pretty much kind of.
I know after that event, you thought, I'm going to need to go somewhere and get away from here to try and find myself again, because I can't deal with this place. So you went to India.
I did. I don't know so much at that point if I had the intention of trying to find myself. Me and Martin, my brother, had been going to India for 1993 for the trance stuff.
Right.
Goa trance. So, I went back there kind of holding on to it. It was a happy place for me. When me and him went, it was good. And so I went back there a couple of times and was all right. And then I went back in 2007. And when I went back in 2007, I ended up back on the pipe there.
How long were you staying in India for at that time then, 2007?
2007, I was there for about 13 weeks. I was only meant to be there for a few weeks. Ended up staying, met a couple of guys who were sending stuff back. They let me into their wee secret. So I started sending stuff back as well, and ended up on the pipe there, and it was a horrendous 4 months of my life.
I know you got mixed up in an event there that would totally change your life forever. Talk me through that, please.
So the following year I went back again, 2008. Me and my mate stayed for 6 months, and we were we were up and down the country, and it was fantastic. It was a great 6 months. It was a mixture of the beach and going and seeing temples and Taj Mahal and all that. But we were doing a wee bit of work when we were there as well. And we came back after 6 months in start of 2009. And I just couldn't live with myself. I couldn't live here in Scotland. And I went back again. And when I went back, with the kind of intention of sending a few things back, just so I had enough money to run away from myself. And I got arrested there on a kind of, not quite a smuggling charge, but I was caught with a quantity of drugs.
I've read the story, so I know you were going to score a bit of hash, and then you were set up by the dealer and the police. Absolutely,
aye.
Can you talk me through that day and exactly what happened?
Aye, so, and see, on the hindsight and on reflection, I was supposed to go and see him on the Friday, and he phoned me on the Friday and says, can you leave it till tomorrow? That's when the setup was happening, and I didn't know that. But I went up to see him in a taxi. I went in to see him, and he was this wee skinny wee Indian guy, and I could tell he'd been on the gear. And I says to him, you look a bit edgy, you need to lay off that stuff. And he told me it was his girlfriend was into it and blah, blah, blah. And he took a phone call when I was there, and he spoke in Conkney, which is the local Goan language. And I didn't really think anything of it, you know what I mean? I got what I was there to get. I left, I had a taxi waiting on me. I got into the taxi, drove down the road, 10 minutes down the road.
Did you know what you had in the bag?
Aye, so I knew what I knew what I had in the bag, aye.
How much did you have?
Aye. So I had 3 kilos that turned into 2.75 kilos.
So was a bar missing?
Bar missing. And I also had, and it was pretty shit stuff as well, you know what I mean? It wasn't the best. But I had 400 grams of good stuff for myself. So the bag's under the chair of the taxi. I've got the good stuff in my pocket. The good stuff went missing. The bar went missing. None of it made sense at the time, you know what I mean?
So you're driving in this taxi, right? You're in the back seat?
No, I was in the front seat.
So you're in the front seat of the taxi. It's just you and the taxi driver. And you're driving. And then what happens? Do you see, is it police cars or is it unmarked?
So this is, it's quite funny you say that. So I'm looking in the mirror, and I can see a marked police car, right? And I'm thinking, oh, I don't like that. A few cars behind, but it cut out and overtook us, and I relaxed a wee bit. And we got to this bit when there was a few speed bumps, and the driver slowed down to go all the speed bumps, and this guy kind of staggered out across the road, and he kind of done that, and I'm thinking, half the road, you idiot, you'll get ran there. And he just stopped in front of the motor. I mean, he stopped like that. The driver stopped, and the car got swarmed with, turned out it was undercover plainclothes police.
So, see at that point, what's going through your mind? If they took you out the taxi, put you in another vehicle?
No, they took me out the taxi, front seat, and put me on the back of the taxi.
Right.
I can remember getting into what I know the day was shock. Everything just all went like a cartoon. I went into this big tunnel. The very same as I had experience I had when I was told that my brother had been found murdered. Everything went cartoony. And I've read stuff that's actually shock happening here.
Like a portal or something?
So I had something like that, you know. I went into this thing. Fear was, you know, I'm thinking, what have you done, James? They put me in the back of the car, taxi. Taxi driver got taken away. One of them jumped in the front and we just drove away.
So one of the police jumped in the taxi and drove away, so they knew. At that point, do you know it's a setup? Are you thinking what's going on here?
At that point,
too much shock?
At that point, all I could think was that the boy who had bought it off had just grasped me, basically, you know what I mean? I thought, how dare he, you know what I mean? So that's what I thought at the time. He's stuck me into the police.
Where do you go from there? Are you driving towards like a detention centre?
They took me to their police station, so they're called the anti-narcotics cell. They took me to their office on a roasting hot Saturday afternoon. Took me into their office, and they were all looking at me, and And all I could hear was this language that I didn't understand a word to, and narcotics and foreigner. They were the only two words that were jumping out at me.
Terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying, aye.
So you're in there. When do you actually get processed through to go to a prison? Or
So I was in there for a week, and there was kind of dungeon-like cells in the
you
police
put in with
station.
somebody else, or
So there was a couple of local people came during the week. There was a guy in for assault. There was another boy in for stealing a mobile phone. So they were coming and they were telling me, "Oh, it's going to be good where you're going to," you know what I mean? And I'm like, how do you gauge good? And what's going to be good
so you
about it?
described it as a dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe the cell, what it was like?
The cell was in two parts. Like a lot of the cells here, there was a kind of concrete thing that if you didn't know any better, you would think it was a bed, but it's just this kind of concrete slab. You didn't get a blanket or a pillow or anything like that, which is probably, with hindsight, probably a good thing because it wouldn't have been very clean. And there was spit and all that where there was. There was another part, it was the toilet, and the toilet had, human feces and what have you, or where there was blood. Horrendous, a wee kind of window that was too high for me to get anywhere near. And it was, because it was May the 23rd I got arrested. It was just getting near the monsoon season, and the temperature would have been 35 degrees outside. I don't know what it would have been in this kind of cell with just this wee bit of light.
So you were in there a week, roughly?
A week.
Where did they take you for there? Was that?
They took me to another prison called Mapsa. Don't know if you're old enough to remember Elias Smith and Jones.
I'm still a young pup, James. I don't remember that one.
Think of some of the cowboy films you see in the wee Mexican jail. So it was something like that, because I can remember at one point thinking somebody could rescue me out of here by pulling in bars out that window, and
an escape attempt or something.
I kind of, a few of them went through my mind as well. But they took me to this place called Mapsa, and it was for under trial. So everybody who was in this place was all on remand. And they put me into it was a big, there was about 22, maybe 25 people in this big cell.
So he's all sleeping on the floor?
Aye. I remember I went in, there was a guy come up to me and he says to me, "That's your place in the corner." I was like, "Thanks." And he says to me, I says, "My name's James." And he says, "We know you're James, we saw you on the read you in the newspapers." He says, "You don't have to tell anybody what your case is, we all know." So I'm like, it kind of relaxed me a wee bit, I'm thinking, he's a decent guy, and as it transpires, he was a decent guy. So I get put in the corner, and every time somebody moved out, I moved round one.
So you're getting an upgrade?
I'm getting an upgrade. But the very first night, they moved me and put me for sleeping, put me under the fan that was in the room, taking a cool down. So they looked after me, there was no...
So what kind of experience was that then? So you're sharing a cell with 30 people. You don't know what their crimes are. Could be rapists, could be murderers. Were you sleeping all right?
First couple of nights I didn't sleep too well. And then there was a guy who was the kind of medicine man who would come round at night with people's medicine. And he says to me, "I can give you a wee tablet if you want a wee tablet." Can I get 2 wee tablets? So my sleep was all right. It wasn't the first couple of nights I was scared. I was scared to sleep because there was a light on all the time. So I was sleeping with kind of something wet on my face.
See, when you were in that cell, 30 people, when did you go outside? What was the regulations? What was the routine?
So there was 2 exercise times. 9 o'clock in the morning you get out for an hour. And then, I'm going to say 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but in the afternoon, at the height of when the sun was right above your head, you were allowed out for another hour. A lot of the time, I didn't really bother going out for the afternoon hour.
Did you get to know some of the prisoners and that? Was there any evil bastards in there? Or?
Aye. Aye, there was, you said there, like rapists and murderers, and so there's no segregation in Indian prisons. But there was one guy, and I can remember walking around the yard with him, and he went to his cell, and I went back to the cell I was in, and straight away the guy who says to me, "That's your bed," says, "Stay away from him, he's bad." And I'm like, well, I've met some bad people before, I'll be all right. And this guy, it turned out he was quite, I don't think he'd ever done anything positive in his life. He was a murderer. He was probably the boss of the jail. Ashpak Bengri was this character's name. I can see him just now.
And you're walking around having this conversation with him. Was he trying to get something off you in a way, like or manipulate? So
he was definitely trying to manipulate me. I can see that now. But also, I was the he would think I was English, although he wouldn't be able to. Scotland and England, they probably wouldn't have known
just British.
Too much of a difference. So I could speak a language that he kind of wanted to be able to speak better. So he would ask me big words and all that type thing, and quite a clever guy too. But never, probably, knowing what I know about him, the way he was with another couple of foreigners, he was probably sizing me up to see what he could get out of me.
Did you ever get any contraband in there yourself, or wee treats you could get your hands on?
Aye.
What'd you get?
Wee treats were, I was always a cannabis smoker. So in MAPSA, the guards weren't getting paid very much, so they would be bringing stuff in. There was people would go and meet people at court, and they would bring stuff in. There was a Japanese boy, and he got trousers sent, and in the lining of the trousers they'd rolled out the black.
Soft black,
man, and it was...
You get to smoke that every day, Jamesy?
Probably, I would say most days I was on the dope, in there.
Yeah, at least you're getting looked after.
Aye.
So how long were you in there for, that place?
I was in there for May until October, and then I got transferred to another place.
What was that place like? Better conditions, or?
No, the other place was bigger, and it had more politics going on in it. It had rival gangs in it. Aye.
Did you see any violence?
I didn't see any violence, although I heard some stuff. So the Ashpak Bengri guy that I'm talking about for MAPSA, he got transferred there, and all his enemies were in there. So he got stabbed and battered with a hammer, and I could hear it all going on, but I didn't actually see it. I saw some Indians get battered with a stick and that after guards, but I didn't see any violence, and I was involved in a couple of wee skirmishes myself.
Never leaves you, does it?
Oh, and there was one that happened, and it was with an Italian guy who he's actually dead now. This guy,
right?
He died with cancer after the trays got released. And I was filled with shame immediately. I was like, he doesn't want to fight me here. You know what I mean?
He just said something stupid.
It was there him not being able to see that this Indian guy was manipulating him and trying to use him to cause a split in the kind of foreigners group. And I told him, look, all the stuff we give you, hash, you're not getting any merit if you want to be kind of hanging about with him. And he didn't know how to control his mouth, but he didn't want to back it up, and I ended up fighting him, and he didn't want to fight me, and it was rubbish.
Did you have a fight, but?
It was pretty one-sided, but and then I apologised to him a few days later, just me and him in the cell. I says, look, I'm sorry about that. And he was like, I was going to wait and confront you in the yard. And I says, look, just don't do that.
That's not a good idea.
Don't do that. Let's just put it to bed. I'm sorry for what I've done. And I met him afterwards and looked after him a wee bit when he got released as well. So,
when did you start to realise you were going to get out? Was it out on bail? Was there another prison you went to?
Jim, it happened really, really quickly. So I got moved to the bigger jail, and then because it was like a 2-hour bus journey to court, sometimes I would be on this bus for 2 hours. I would get to court, and the court wouldn't go ahead, or I had been too late and went back. So I'd applied for, I moved back to the original place. So I get put back there in February, and then in March or April, probably maybe the end of March, there was newspapers, and in the newspaper it was a story of all these the anti-narcotics cell had all been arrested on drug-related corruption charges, and I'm like, they've arrested me, man. This is going to be good. So on the back of that, I got a text message. I had a wee mobile phone that these Indian guys looked after for me, and they used to give me it back when the door was shut at night. But I wasn't allowed to phone anybody, because if anybody had heard me speaking, I had to be speaking to somebody else Scottish. So they were like, you can text, but you're not allowed to phone. So I got a message off one of my friends here saying my lawyer had been in touch, thinks he can get me bail, and he sent however much money. And I messaged back saying, don't give him a penny, he can't get me bail. I got the lawyer to come and see me, and the lawyer says, look, there's been something happened in another case, and we think we can get you bail. So I ended up, I lay in prison for a year, and then I got bail in 2010.
What was that feeling like? When did you actually find out you were walking out of there on bail? I went
to court on the Friday, and they granted me bail on the Friday, and I thought, this is brilliant, amazing. And then they took me back and didn't let me out to the Monday. So I had another long weekend, along with a Swedish boy that I became quite pal with, and we just, we ended up stealing other people's nightly drugs and just kind of sleeping for a good part of the weekend.
So take me to the Monday then, when you were getting out.
The Monday, my mate had come here, him and his wife had come here to kind of pay the bail and make sure I had something to commit to. And I was all gone because I knew it was going to be later on in the day on the Monday. So Monday was a long day, just waiting on the shout. So it was probably about 4:30 on the Monday afternoon. They shouted my name and came and opened the door. And everybody was all banging their gates and all that. And I was quite popular, you know what I mean? I was quite a popular guy. And they were all wishing me good luck. And I felt I was leaving my Swedish mate. And he was maybe not as able to speak up for himself as I was. And I didn't feel I was abandoning him, but I was a wee bit concerned for him, to be leaving him, because it was a rat race, you know what I mean? It was...
Aye, so if you're showing any signs of weakness, especially in a place like that, you're going to get picked on, you're going to get abused.
Absolutely.
So you got out. Where did you go for there? Because I know you said that you had to spend another few years in India before even getting back home to Scotland, because this process in the court, it was so slow and corrupt in a way. Aye,
totally. So my pal who'd come here and his wife, they'd kind of got a wee flat, and I went there for the night. So it's 2010, April 2010, when the volcanic ash cloud was above Iceland. They were supposed to go the next day, their flight got delayed, so I was able to spend a couple of days with them. I was meant to be staying in a flat, and the guy let me down, and I didn't have anywhere to stay, so I was in a wee hut with everybody for a couple of days, and then I got a wee flat not far from the beach, because my mate who'd come here had brought money and stuff to make sure I was all right.
So I know you were saying you weren't allowed to work because you never had a passport. You had to stay there. How long were you in India when you were released in? So I know you're back and forth to court.
So I got bail in April 2010, and I didn't fly back until the end of July 2013. So 3 years and 2 months.
How did you survive in that time frame?
So I survived with probably doing quite a lot of the stuff that I'd been doing that got me arrested in the first place, and kind of relying on the goodwill of people back here. So I'm sending some stuff back, and people are sending me money. But I've also got a drug habit at this point as well, and I was trying to put on this brave face that everything's all right. People were coming on holiday, some people were coming to see me, and then they would go away again and say, I'll see you back in Scotland, and then the following year they would be coming back again, and I was still there, you know what I mean? And that happened for I had 5 monsoons. The penultimate court appearance was on April the 1st, 2013, and we were late. I'd moved down a bit further down south. I had this mad taxi dash to get to court. And when I got to court, they took my statement. So my statement comes right at the very end of the evidence. And my statement basically is, my lawyer asked me, I don't know, maybe it was about 60 questions. And I had to answer no to all these questions. Right, that was just a farce. No. And then that was it. So, you know, I was told to come back on, I'm going to say the 18th of April. So I was told to come back in like just over 2 weeks. So I had 2 weeks not knowing what was going to happen. Being quite excited about it, thinking I was going to be back in Scotland, hopefully. Because I'd always been told, look, you'll go through that trial and you'll be all right. And I knew that my lawyer during the trial had been kind of unpicked their case. So on the 18th of April, I went up. I was seeing a lassie at the time. She was with me. My mate was there with his girlfriend, and they came to court with me. And we went in on at 10 o'clock, and they told me to come back in the afternoon at 2. I'm like, right, okay. So I went away and messed about for another 4 hours. I went back in the afternoon at 2, and they told me to come back again at 5. And I went back at 5 to be met by a court usher who I got to know because he'd been there for 3 years. A policeman in uniform, but his job was to usher in the court. And he's like, well done. I'm like, well done what? Nobody's told me anything. It's okay. And I'm like, so then they called me in. The judge took me in his chambers. And I remember being in the judge's chambers, and it was really cool in his chambers, because it was, you know, April, it's really hot, and into his chambers, air conditioning must have been turned up full, and there was the prosecutor, a female who worked for my lawyer's team, but I didn't know her, and the judge, and I was made to stand in front of him, and I remember shaking almost like in a convulsion. My nerves were all gone, and he was talking away in Conkany, which is the going language to these two, and then she says to me, well done, that's you, you've been acquitted, and see, at that point I felt cheated a wee bit. I wanted my day, I wanted to be like Paddy Conlon going out the front door, you know what I mean? And it was all done in chambers, and so I'm saying to her, when can I go home? And then she told me that there was a 3-month appeal period to allow the prosecution time to appeal against the verdict. So
that was another 3 months.
I was kept another 3 months.
And then see, after that 3 months, did you get your passport?
I got a year passport thing. The British consul were kind enough to sell me a passport that I got one flight with. So I was able to fly from Bombay to London with this thing.
So talk me through that then. So you're on the flight, you know, you're going home, you land in London. Where do you go for there? London,
landed at the international terminal, and then made my way to the domestic terminal to fly into Glasgow. So I was arriving in Glasgow on the last flight for London about 10 o'clock or 10:30 at night.
What year was that?
2013.
Back in Glasgow. So what was your frame of mind? What was your thoughts? Right, what do I need to do here? Where am I going?
So my mum was there to meet me with my son. He'd actually came to visit me when I was in prison in India as well. So, you know, it was my wee ma, and it was dead poignant, and it was good for her. So I came back, and there was there was some press interest at the time as well, and I told my story to a guy for the Evening Times who was really fair during the thing. Some of the other media outlets weren't as fair as he was. So I kind of spoke to him, and I thought, right, okay, what am I going to do next? And I was just engulfed with this paranoia, Jim, man. I'd all the stuff I had ran away from. You know what? It was still waiting on me when I came back, and plus I'd all the other stuff that I'd picked up along the way. So I was in a bit of a state when I came back. To be honest, I didn't know.
Do you still have a drug habit?
No, I was still smoking dope at that point. I would never have thought to call that a drug habit. Something I'd done most days of my life for 30 years. So I wasn't using Valium that I'd been using. Although I started kind of using wee bits here and wee bits there.
When did you really start to get better then? Start to deal with things in your mind, go completely no mind altering substances, start getting into the programme?
2018.
Right.
So I had for 2013 I was kind of dabbling in stuff, I wasn't smoking dope all the time, using some Valium now and again, using cocaine now and again, but just no being happy. There was a trial in 2015. They arrested some people for my brother's murder. 11 years after the event, there was a trial, and it was a big trial in the High Court. It lasted 6 weeks, and I ended up no well, kind of at the end of that. So I'm still using wee bits here and wee bits there.
It's just more trauma, isn't it? Having to deal with that as well.
It's just a big, and I didn't know any of that was trauma. I didn't, because of my age, how can it be trauma at my age and all that? It was, I didn't learn any of that until kind of quite recently, I suppose. But in 2018, I got to a fellowship, 12-step fellowship, and I went because I was taking somebody else to a meeting. And when I got to the meeting, at that point I was abstinent. I've not drank for like 23 years now, so 17, 18 years then. I hadn't been smoking any dope. I hadn't used any cocaine for a few months at that point. But that had been my pattern throughout my life. I'd been able to stop, but could never stay stopped. So I got to a meeting, fellowship meeting, and I heard the guy who chaired the meeting, and he spoke about, when you stop, can you stay stopped? And I was like, no, not really. And when you start again, can you control how much you take? And my experience generally was no. So I thought, I'm going to give this a wee go here.
So that got you thinking. Mm-hmm. You started going through the steps.
Aye.
And it worked for you.
Aye. Continues to work for me today.
And now, at this point, you're starting to help other people. We tapped into it at the start of the episode. You're now a manager in this rehab, and you're not just helping, you're helping everybody. You're helping yourself as well, because when you put that good work in, you get that goodness back. And to see other people, like you told me earlier, when you start to see other people changing, and you're using your experience, your influence in a way,
aye,
to help people, there's no better feeling than
that.
Aye,
you're right.
And well done for that, Jamesy boy.
Thanks very much, Jim.
I want to talk about the story of how we met, because that's a powerful story.
Absolutely, it's a cracker.
So if you can talk us through it, because it's madness, but it's also synchronicity.
Mm.
And when you go, I can't wait to hear it.
So, 2000 and the first year of COVID, the kind of second year of COVID, I started climbing hills. I was working in a hospital in an emergency department. I would maybe be working 3 shifts on, 2 or 3 off. So somebody had introduced me to hills, and I was climbing Monroes and doing 3 and 4 and 5 a week for fun, and it was absolutely magic. But I caught COVID, and I didn't climb any for a wee bit. And then 2 of my mates were like, "Mum, we'll go and climb a hill." So we went up to Ben Volley at Loch Ernhead. And it was a bit of a slog for me, it was one of my first ones back, and got to a bit where it gets flat just before the final pull at the top of the Monroe. And I says to the 2 of them, I'm just going to sit here, because it was a wee sun trap. Although it was probably a spring day, I'm thinking, Start of spring, maybe, so that'd be 2022, start of spring. There was still quite a bit of snow up in the top, and I thought, I'm not going to go up there. And then three guys and a woman can approach me, and I had a Max Colby recovery hat on.
I remember it well.
And you says, oh, I like your hat. And so that's how the wee conversation came about, and we had a conversation that lasted 10 minutes. I think we'd say, here's my name, and we'll add one another on social media.
And you said to me when I was walking down, me and John, it was with me, and it was, I think, it was just us two and a lassie.
Aye.
And when we were walking away, he shouted, and buy my book. He started laughing, but we looked into your book. But that wasn't the only synchronicity that time.
So it was, so my two mates come down, and I said, I just met a few guys there, and I was just having a blather. So we came down the hill, went to our motor, used a wee fire at the side of the lock, and we said hello again, and I think that's where we done the social media thing. So a couple of weeks later, we were going back out again. I don't know if we'd been out before in the kind of period in between, but we were going up to do another hill up at, I think we parked up at Dal Rig, so you can walk into Ben Louis one way, or there's another one, I can't remember the name of it, a pure bog fest, mud up to the knees. So we got to another bit when I was getting quite tired, and I says to them, look, I'm going to head back down to where it's quite warm. You just go up, take your time, don't rush, and I'll get you down below. Excuse me. I says, I'm going to follow the stream. So if you follow the stream down, you'll get me at some point. So I'm walking back down the hill, and I smelt what I thought was a barbecue, right? And I'm like, somebody's having a barbecue, I'm going to invite myself, right? And I walked down in it, and there was one of them wee logs that you buy that you set on fire, and it kind of starts the fire. But there was nobody there. So I went there, and I sat, and I was warming my hands at the fire, and I took a picture of the log in between my feet. And I sat for a wee bit, and the fire went out eventually, and them two came back down, and they were laughing. What's going on? I said, I found a wee fire, and we were having a laugh about it. And we went back down the hill and back came, and then later on, I saw you posting on Facebook, your wee fire at the side of this stream, and I'm like, no way, man. And I messaged you, and I was like, I found that log, look at this, man. And it was like, I had took a photo, and it was almost the same photo that you had took with the fire and with the log in between your...
I remember your message.
In between your feet.
Because you said to me, did you leave this log here? And it was me that lit it.
Aye.
So I always carry the wee logs when we go mountain climbing and stuff, because I like a good heat, because my hands go freezing up there. And I says to you, it was me that left it. And we had a good wee bit of banter with it, and such a synchronicity. But it's an amazing story, and you spoke to me earlier on, you says all these wee things that add up to us just sitting here right now.
Aye, absolutely.
And it's powerful. And
definitely.
I always do this, James, but before we finish up on the episode, right, if you've got a message you can send out to the audience, now is the time.
My message to the audience, I suppose, believe in yourself. Whatever it is that you're doing, whatever dream you've got, because you believe in yourself here, doing what you're doing. 18 months ago, I hadn't qualified as a therapist yet. I've worked in Thailand since. I've worked in a rehab here as a therapist. And now I'm deputy manager in one. Just because I believed that anything's possible. So absolutely anything's possible, man. And go for it. Whatever your dream is, just go. Go for your dream.
Great message, James. I want to thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure, Jim. Thank you for asking me.
An incredible story, and I'm sure we'll meet up again soon.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.